Welcome back, welcome travelers. I told you I'd return with more amusing anecdotes about my days working at Disney World. All you needed was a little bit of patience. But enough about me, how have you been? Have you been eating well? My god, you're practically nothing but skin and bones. Here, have some bog juice, it's good for your bones. Now, there was actually a position that I forgot to talk about in the last part because it's been years since I fucking worked at TLT. Cut me some slack. Now, this position is called Stroller Parker. Each level except 2 has one. You basically just park the strollers that the guests have while they eat at the party. Level 3 Stroller Parker requires that you set up a bunch of stanchions that mark the area where the strollers go. Aside from that, it's a pretty chill position. I'd probably rank it above Stalker on how much I liked it. Could get a little boring at times, but not bad. Another thing I wanted to mention was the app where we got our schedule from. I forgot what the app was called, maybe I'll find it later, but who knows. But the annoying thing was that you could only see your schedule like 1 to 2 weeks at a time. Then again, it was like this when I worked at Winn-Dixie as well. But that was a story for another time. Moving on. Now, one question that you may have had from last time was, how did I get to work from the dorms? Did I drive? Hell no! Do you know how much a damn car would cost on a $16 an hour wage with a big chunk going to rent? I think not. Luckily for me and the other residents of Flamingo Crossings, there was a comprehensive bus system for us to get to and from the parks and hotels and surrounding resorts. In order to know what bus to get on and when it would leave, you would need to download this app. It was a bit cumbersome for me to figure out at first, but I managed. Something that didn't make a whole lot of sense was the headways for the buses on the route to get to Magic Kingdom. There were 3 buses per hour. However, instead of spacing them out every 20 minutes, like evenly like they would in the city, they were spaced out 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then 35 minutes. And believe me when I say that this could lead to some long-ass wait times at the end of the workday. Like, I'm tired and sweaty after a long-ass day of doing runner shit at TLT, and I just want to go home. But no! The bus has to run on a goofy-ass schedule for some reason, and I have to wait 30 minutes for the next goddamn bus now! And these buses were operated by an outside contractor as well, and you could feel it. You've probably been on the Disney park buses that have a lot of air conditioning. Great just to sit on a bus with a cool stream of air blowing over you after a long day of fun in the sun, right? Well, we didn't get that privilege. These buses had little to no air conditioning, and in the summer in Florida, it makes for a pretty unpleasant experience. It also didn't help that Flamingo Crossings was split between 2 different campuses, east side and west side, and the buses went to the east side before coming over to the west side, which is where I lived. And there would often be few, if any, seats left whenever it showed up at my stop. Although one cool thing that could happen was that you could get a coach bus to pick you up instead of the city-style buses that they would normally have. Man, every night after clocking out, I always knew the exact spot to sit to get on the bus before everyone else. And when I saw a coach bus coming, I knew it was going to be a sweet-ass ride back because those seats were padded and you weren't going to be crowded by a bunch of sweaty-ass people either. I would have to say that my least favorite memory of the buses was the time I threw up water all over one. Let me explain. Okay, so the cast members at the parks get these plastic water bottles that you can hook onto your uniform. At TLT, we also had a water station where you could easily fill the water bottles up. And let me tell you, when it's hot as shit outside, and you're gonna be drinking a lot of water. Now, unfortunately, since it's a wet heat in Florida, you don't really know when you should stop drinking the water. So one night, I ended up drinking way too much water. I didn't notice anything during my shift, but when I clocked out, I began to feel a bit sick. And this sick feeling only got worse as I waited for the bus. When the bus eventually arrived, I made a mad dash for the back, but I ended up throwing up a little bit of water on the way. However, no one really noticed. Plus the lights in the bus were off, so no one really saw it. But that was when I knew some bullshit was about to happen. I knew that this was a mere harbinger of things to come. The ride back was awful. I had this feeling in my stomach. You know the one. The feeling that you could just upchuck at any moment all over the floor of the bus in front of all these people. And the heat on the bus was not doing me any favors, that was for sure. I just needed to make it home, and then I could throw up to my heart's content in my own toilet out of the view of the public. The bus made it all the way back to the east side without me throwing up. I was almost home, but as I stood up, something shifted within me. My body couldn't hold it back anymore. I tried as hard as I could to prevent it, but it was no goddamn use. I threw up a shit ton of water that I had downed earlier all over the floor of the bus. and the lights were on, so many people saw. I was just glad that I hadn't eaten anything during my shift because that could have been really bad. After the incident, I exited the bus and just laid down on one of the flat stone benches in the bus area. I just needed to get my bearings. My head was spinning and I felt like a total dog dookie. Luckily, some other people noticed that I was doing horrendously, and one of them gave me some Ritz crackers to eat while they walked me home. Still felt like shit afterwards though. That was just one of my worst nights ever over at Flamingo Crossings. One thing I forgot to mention about TLT is that you take your break at the beginning of your shift. It's only about 15 minutes usually, as you'd only be working 6 hours typically. This might sound good initially, but you have to remember that there are another 5 3/4 hours, 345 minutes with no break in the Florida humidity. Yeah. There's another thing about being a cast member that I should tell you about, and that is the telecasts. What are the telecasts? Well, they're these little pamphlets that are put out for the cast members that are typically updated every 2 weeks. They essentially act as reference guides for cast members about a whole bunch of different stuff around the parks. Info like park hours, parade and show times, what food was served at each restaurant, and the location of the guest services. On the front of the pamphlet, they would always put some topical event relating to the park, such as a certain special event that would be happening, or when they would start celebrating Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Oh shit! Speaking of Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, Tomorrowland Terrace cast members had to wear new uniforms for those. Let's peep the new fit out. Alright, so the Halloween party uniforms are a lot more colorful than the Space Ranger chef uniforms that we wore on the non-party days. The outfit for the fellas consisted of purple pants, a green shirt, a yellow and purple vest, as well as a bat bow tie to tie the whole outfit together. I hated this outfit when we first had to wear it, but now I actually kind of like it, especially in comparison to the more muted color palette of the regular TLT costume. And this outfit was not at all exclusive to TLT. In fact, for most of the videos I've seen, it seems like most of the restaurants in Magic Kingdom had to wear these fits. Now, one thing that did suck about these costumes was that you had to wear a hairnet. The men did at least. I'm not sure if the women did because they had to wear a bat headpiece as well, but they probably did have to wear one too. Not quite sure though. But I will never forget the very first night that I worked for the Not So Scary Halloween Party. That is because I was assigned to work as exit greeter for the 3rd floor that night. Everything was going smoothly. I was checking people's wristbands, making sure people didn't leave with alcohol, the huge. But then, this older lady comes up to me, and she has a very pressing question. This lady comes up to me and asks me with a straight fucking face,
Excuse me, is the YouTuber paging Mr. Morrow in the dessert party tonight?
and I just stood there in a stunned silence for about 2 seconds before I responded because I was just flabbergasted by the question. After a while I say, I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. And then she just left without saying much else. But like, what a goddamn question to just ask a random service employee. Like, oh, is Dude Perfect here tonight? I don't even know what that guy looks like, man. And even if he was there, I probably wouldn't know unless I was on podium, and it would be under his real ass name and not a screen name. And even if I did know who that was, and he was in fact here tonight, do you think I'm gonna let you in to see him or something? Fuck no, it's like $130 to get in here. And it's fully booked, so you can fuck right off, bro. It ain't happening. Alrighty now, let's talk about food waste. At the dessert party, we had a lot of food waste at the end of the night. Shocking, I know. Any excess drinks were just poured down the AVAC drain at the end of the night, but any excess food that was still left on the buffet by the end of the night was not thrown in the trash. No, no, no. Instead, you would get one of the big drink buckets, and you would start pouring the excess food in there. Now for some items, this was easy. Just dump the excess into the buckets, but then there were items in the little plastic containers. Now the chamber pops weren't too bad. Just push the pop and dump the food into the bucket, trash the plastic bits. But then there were the food items in the little plastic cups. For these, you would have to individually scoop out as much as you could with the spoon before you could even think about throwing the cup away. You would have to do this for every single rectangular cup still on the buffet. And if there were still a lot left on the buffet, then guess what you'd be doing for the next 20 minutes before you close? After you've spoiled all of the food, you take the big food waste trash can next to the fryers and dump that shit before handing the empty container to dish. Now I know what you're thinking. Were you allowed to eat the food that was about to be spoiled? No! You were not allowed to eat the food that was about to be thrown away. I mean, I saw some people eating the food before it was about to be thrown out, but I certainly would never do such a thing. Nope, never in my life. No, I would never dream of it. I think the reason they were so anal about people not eating the spoil food was because they were using it for shit. I think they used to make bus fuel out of it, but now I think it goes towards composting for the flower festival at Epcot or something. You know, real eco-friendly and shit. However, there was one night when the fireworks were delayed by like an hour and everyone had to stay really late, but it was then that the leader on shit for that night let us eat the food off the buffet that was about to be spoiled. And man, that was a glorious moment. I mean, we still had to close TLT afterwards, but still a great moment. Now, in addition to the spoil buckets, there were also the broken glass buckets that the runner had to get out. Yet another fucking thing that the runner had to do. These buckets would be broken out whenever a drink glass or something else made of glass would shatter all over the floor. Can't throw that shit out with the rest of the garbage or else it'll probably cut you up. Now, there was one time at TLT when a full bottle of wine was dropped and needed to be cleaned up. The coordinators then tasked me with taking the glass bucket to the outside receptacle for that shit. Now, the receptacle for the broken glass was not near the trash compactor. Instead, it was all the fuck the way across the parking lot behind Tomorrowland and sat right up against the tracks for the Walt Disney Railroad. That's right, kids. There's a damn recycling bin and a receptacle for broken glass when you're about to reach the Main Street station. Try to spot it next time you're riding the train. You were supposed to separate the broken glass from all of the paper towels and napkins used to clean the liquid up, but fuck that, I ain't touching broken glass. And they were none the wiser either. Now, you all know how I feel about the runner position at Tomorrowland Terrace, and you would also know that they like to assign people who were on the taller side to it. But that didn't mean they would always assign taller people to be runner. I've seen some times when they would assign shorter people to be runner, and man, they would struggle like hell. Especially with rolling the drink racks back to dish. This could be especially problematic because there were only a limited amount of rollers that could be used. Sometimes I would help the shorter people out with bringing the glass racks back to dish. It was no biggie for me. I'm damn near 6 feet tall, but some of the people they assigned for this shit were like less than 5 feet. One other thing about the TLT kitchen that was kind of weird was the smell. It wasn't a bad smell, it was just really off-putting. It was kind of like you just put a bunch of sweets in a dumpster. It was just like a cacophonous smell of various sweet things. It was sweet to the point of sickness in some respects. I personally did not like the smell of the kitchen, but it didn't take too long to get used to it. But after you go to work at a different location for a month and then come back, it hits something bad, man. One part of the dessert party that you may notice if you've ever looked at any of the pictures online is that there's a big black cloth behind the buffet. This is often decorated with lights during the holidays to make the dessert party more festive. However, it also serves a more important purpose, and that was to hide the space behind it. You see, TLT used to be an actual restaurant back in the day, and there were registers for people to order and places for people to stand and eventually take their orders. However, now that TLT is the dessert party, this space served essentially no function, so it was covered up. But that didn't mean it wasn't useful to us. We used this space to store drink racks and to move behind the buffet area when it was particularly busy and you didn't have time to sift through the crowd. It was honestly a nice little area to have, just an area for the cast members while on stage. So color me surprised one day after I clock in and head on stage and there's just a bunch of goddamn TV equipment in there. Like, what the fuck? What's all that shit doing in there? Apparently it was for some Canadian sports channel or some shit. I don't really remember their name, but I remember them inconveniencing us for whatever goddamn reason. The next day, all that shit was gone. So they just needed the space for that day for some reason. Incredible. Simply incredible. Speaking of bullshit, I should talk about the sodas that we had at TLT. Now, these were not at all like the sodas you would get at a regular restaurant where you would get it out of one of those drink machines that mix the club soda in with the syrup. No, we actually had bottles of Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, and Dasani water bottles. And people would frequently ask for all 4 of those. Yes, even the Dasani. I know. Why ask for a Dasani when there's a water dispenser right there? But you do have to remember that the guests couldn't take any of the drink glasses out of the party with them. So it does make sense in that respect. Although one thing that sucked about them was that they were stored in a cooler in the back. It was the same area in the back where we stored the food trays before they would be needed. And that area was also where the glass racks were stored at the end of the night as well. Now, there was one time when me and this little short girl who was runner one time were both on bar, and this British lady came up and asked for some bottles of water. I was the only person on bar at the time, and as you probably know by now, I couldn't leave to get water bottles. The short girl, who for the sake of anonymity shall henceforth be known as... Alan. I think she was already getting some sodas from the little fridge for someone else, so she wasn't there. I then say to the woman that I didn't have any bottles of water at the moment, but that when my friend came back, she could get some. And then this bitch started getting snippy with me, saying shit like, "What do you mean you don't have any bottles of water? Do you have bottles of water? What kind of service is this?" I was like, damn, bitch! I didn't say that shit out loud, obviously, but I was definitely thinking it. Anyways, Alan comes back and I asked her to go get some water bottles for the old hag. She then came back with the water bottles a little later and the woman left in a huff. Never apologized for being rude to us and just took her water bottles and fucked off. After that, me and Alan bonded during closing about how much of a piece of shit that lady was. The next couple of times I was assigned a bar, I tried to prevent another situation like that from happening again. At the beginning of the bar shifts, I would get one of the round buckets and I would fill it with ice. I would then grab a couple of Cokes, Diet Cokes, Sprites, and especially Dasanis from out of the little fridge. Then I would just plop the bucket of drink on the bottom level of the cart, and whenever someone asked me specifically for a drink, I could just reach down and give it to them. No having to radio the request or beg the runner to get me some drinks, just pick it out of the bucket. Now, one thing that sucked about the sodas was that they weren't stored in the regular TLT stockroom, which was right next to the rickety-ass elevator that led up to the kitchen. No, they were stored all the way in the Casey's stockroom. Now, at this point, I had not been cross-trained at Casey's Corner yet, and I didn't know where the hell to go to get more of the sodas. And that was frustrating as hell because sometimes they would actually ask me to go over and get the drinks from there, but I didn't know where the hell to go, so I would just come back empty-handed and be like, "Sorry, I don't know where the hell it is." Speaking of the stockroom, I actually had to go in and organize that shit with another cast member once. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call her... Torrance. Me and Torrance had to go into the stockroom and basically make it navigable for anyone trying to get at shit at the back. Let me tell you, that place was a goddamn mess when we got there. But after like 4 hours of work, it was still kind of a mess. But hey, you could walk around the back parts now. And hey, it was a good thing to see where all the stuff was. I mean, a lot of stuff was in places that it shouldn't be. And some of the stuff just straight up wasn't there. But at least the important shit was all there. Like the coffee and tea bags. Oh, fuck! Forgot about that. I literally just remembered that as I was writing this part of the script. Okay, so I forgot about some of the shit that you had to do on drinks in the first part. What do you want from me, people? This was years ago! I know you asswipes will be forgetting details after a couple of years, too. Anyways, in addition to the 6 cold drinks that were served and the sparkling cider, there were a few hot drinks that were served as well. There was regular coffee, decaf, and tea. Both coffees were made using the proper coffee machines we had in the back. The tea, on the other hand, just had a hot water dispenser. You had to go fill that shit up from a very specific tap that dispensed water that was nearly fucking boiling. Okay, maybe not that hot, but you get the picture. Then the guests would pick a bag of tea from the wooden box we put out, and they would make their tea from the hot water. I don't remember the hot drinks being too popular, especially during the summer months when it was already hotter than holy hell outside. So, yeah. And also, one more note on bar. I thought it was kind of weird how the British were the only ones that drank the Bud Light, like, almost exclusively. Everyone loved the Sparkling White, Blue Moon, and the Moscato, but for some reason the British specifically liked the Bud Light. Like, they would always come up and ask, "Oh, can I have some of the lager?" Sure, dude, you're basically the only person tonight who's asked for it. There were also a lot of British people in general at the dessert parties. Makes sense. If you're going on a big vacation to Disney World, you might as well go all out. Now, if I may, I would like to talk a little bit more about the one, the only, the absolute best position at TLT. Fryers. Shit, y'all know how much I love fryers, don't ya? But don't be fooled. Just because it was a desirable post didn't mean I didn't have any challenges. For instance, the fryer filter. This thing was a metal tub that you would have to roll out of the chemical closet from outside of the restaurant in order to filter out the fryer oil for the day's use. Now, this could be a massive pain in the ass at times because in order to get the oil back into the fryer for use, you would have to attach this metal piece or the tube at the front of the cart tub sat on. The oil was run through a little hose-like piece when you flipped it on. Yeah, it had to be plugged in as well. Now, one of the big pains in my ass was that the flat filter piece was supposed to touch the bottom of the tub so that all the oil would be sucked back up. However, the tube that connected it to the mechanism to put the oil back in didn't go down far enough, and it wouldn't get all the oil back up. So to make this work, I had to get a bunch of trays and stick them under the tub to make sure it was just the right height so that the oil would go back through. And the oil had to be boiling fucking hot when it went through the filter, apparently. I don't know why, that's just how I was told to do it. And you had to heat that fryer oil all the way up before you could even start. And that shit was really goddamn hot, like 360 degrees kind of shit. And I had to wear PPE gloves and an apron when I was doing that shit, and heat was coming through the gloves to an almost unbearable degree when I was holding the little hose part at times. Had to get some napkins to hold that shit with, just to fucking keep the heat out. Another thing that sucked about the oil filter was that at a certain point, it would start to lose a lot of pressure when you were close to refilling the oil in the fryer. The refilling process could get just painfully slow at times. Now, you would have to clean out the tub and filter as well, but I would always wait till the end of my shift to do that. You know, wait till the oil and the tub are nice and cool. Then you would have to either dry up any of the excess oil with napkins or pour it into a little container for disposal in the grease trap out back. Then you would have to wipe everything down and make sure that it was nice and clean for the next day's use. The fryer filter was the only real gripe I had with being on fryers. And after you've been on fryers enough, you get used to it, like I said. But one time, I got a nasty little surprise waiting for me. So apparently, one of Casey's filters wasn't working one day, so they borrowed ours. I found this out because when I went to the chemical closet one day, and the filter wasn't there. But soon after, they did bring it back, but they didn't fucking clean it properly before bringing it back. It was greased the fuck up, and there was a bunch of water droplets in it as well, because I think they attempted to wash it before bringing it back over, but clearly they didn't do a good job. So I had to clean that shit out before filtering the fryer and after the shift. Real nice, guys. Really kicked me in the balls with that one. But speaking of fryers, there was one shift where I plopped the frozen donuts into the frying basket, and after they cooked, they didn't look quite right. I couldn't exactly pinpoint what was wrong, but I knew something was up with these nuts. So I split one open, and to my horror, the dough on the inside was raw! Luckily, I had caught this long before any of the plates went out. But it was still shocking, especially because I hadn't been doing anything different from the last time I had done this. I had cooked them for the exact same time, at the exact same temperature, but for some reason, they were still raw in the middle. All I had to do was put the donuts back in the fryers with some tongs, and the problem was rectified in a few minutes. But from this point when I was on fryers, I was really goddamn paranoid about the donuts. I would only take them out when they were the perfect dark brown color, no lighter. And I would occasionally split one open just to make sure they were cooked all the way. Nobody was gonna eat raw dough on my watch. Things I'd do for you people. Okay, so you remember what I told you about the donut batter, right? You gotta make sure there's at least 12 trays of donuts in the cart for the next day. And there has to be 6 trays of donuts in the freezer as well. And it didn't matter if you were supposed to clock out at a certain time. If the donut trays weren't made, then your ass was staying to make them. I'm pretty sure this is what happened to Alan. You all know Alan, right? Little short girl I was talking about earlier was also Canadian, forgot to mention that. Well, I think someone might not have made all the donuts they needed to the day before, and then Alan got stuck with making more trays of them. Now, I couldn't just let a shorty make all those donuts alone in a dead kitchen, so I stayed and helped with the donuts. We got out a lot faster than if it had just been one person doing it. And speaking of cleaning up other people's messes, you can bet your ass that people made quite the mess at the dessert party, especially the kids. Whoo boy, there would be quite a bit of food, utensils, napkins, even plates sometimes on the floor after the dessert party. Hell, sometimes the kid would get the damn chairs dirty, and we'd have to wipe those down in addition to busting all the tables and wiping them down and sweeping the whole floor. It also didn't help that there were often tables for very large parties. I'm talking parties of like 10, 12, even 14 people, and they would just be a complete fucking mess afterwards. Food all over the place, spilled drinks, just a complete fucking disaster zone. I swear, sometimes when I was on Buster, I would just look over all this shit we would have to clear in like the next 20 minutes before the next party. That kind of shit just makes you have disdain for life itself. Another thing that made messes worse was that before a certain time, Casey's Corner would direct people over to the TLT seating for their lunch rush. So before you would even start your damn shift, there would already be a bunch of goddamn little messes that you would have to clean up from the tables. Incredible. Just incredible. However, that wouldn't apply to level 2. Level 2 was always blocked off from the guests unless there was a full party. And you know what? I actually didn't mind working on level 2 when I had to. I've been on bar and busser, and I can safely say that it is far less stressful than anything on level 1. Especially if it was a night when the second floor was only like half full. And the busing for it was a real quick and easy as well. And you didn't even have to stay and help level 1 close post party. Level 2 was only for the pre-party, so once that shit was over, you just packed everything up and went home. Ah, those were the shifts. I remember one Halloween party that had enough people booked for them to open level 2, but not enough people for it to be a huge crowd. It was a pretty nice experience. And speaking of the Halloween parties again, there was one awkward guest interaction that we had on level 3 after one of the parties was coming to a close. By this point, almost everyone had left and we had begun to take all of the plates and glasses away. But there was this one guy in like a doctor's coat or something who just continued to sit there as we were going about our business cleaning everything up. I thought it was really weird that this guy was just fucking sitting there like, dude, the party is over. Go away. Some of the other cast members that were there reported that he had been like stood up on a date or something and that he was like spilling his trauma to them and shit. Like, bro, we've been here for 6 hours and I'm trying to sweep up. There's only so much that we service employees can care about. Speaking of level 3, I've talked a little bit about the AVAC for that floor, but did you know that there was a good few months where the area around it just smelled like total ass? Yeah, there was a terrible smell lingering in that area, the AVAC on level 3. It was bad enough that we had to move a bunch of tables away from that area so the guests wouldn't notice or complain. They sent one of us down into the bushes to see if an animal had died in there, but nothing turned up. Eventually, we found out that it was the result of a burst sewage line, and they did fix it, but man, that area was just awful to be in for a while. Speaking of awful things happening at Tomorrowland Terrace, there was one day that I was starting to set some stuff up on level 3. I think it was for bar, and sitting at one of the tables meant for the guests, I see a mother and child sitting across from a cast member who I think was a leader of some sort. They certainly weren't a leader from Tomorrowland Terrace. That was for damn sure. I had never seen that leader before in my life. I know that people aren't supposed to be down here while we're setting up, but they were talking to a cast member, so I let it slide and I didn't question it. Then I go back upstairs to get some more things to set up for the bar. When I come back, that group had been joined by a Disney security officer. I think that things are getting a little weird, but it was probably none of my business, and I should just continue to set up for the party. I go back upstairs to get more things for the bar. When I get back to level 3, or rather, just before I'm about to enter level 3, I see that the solemn group from before has been joined by 3 Orange County Sheriff's deputies! At this point, I'm thinking, oh shit, something really bad happened, didn't it? And it probably happened to that kid. And I just sit on the second floor because there was a convenient ramp that led from the second floor to the third floor, which I had intended to use, but since those officers were using the third floor to likely take witness testimony for something, I wasn't going down there anytime soon. And neither were any of the other cast members tasked with setting up the third floor. And that wasn't the only incident on level 3 where the police got involved with some shit either. Apparently, someone got fucking arrested on level 3 on one night. I was not there to witness it because I was over at Casey's Corner by that point, but Jesus Christ, man. What is it with level 3 that attracts this shit? Anyways, on a lighter note, let's talk about the bus situation to get from Flamingos Crossings to Disney Springs. Now, if you're a cast member working at Disney Springs, you just go on the bus that goes to Disney Springs. Simple enough, right? However, if you aren't working at Disney Springs, the guards on the other side of the bridge won't let you through unless you're there to work a damn shift. Literal goddamn bridge trolls are keeping you from going to the movies and shit. So if you wanted to go to, say, the AMC Theater or something in that area, you would either have to walk all the way to one of the parking garages along a hostile-ass arterial road, or you get on the bus that goes to Saratoga Springs Resort, which is across the lake from Disney Springs, and take a boat from there. However, when I went, the boat was never running to that spot, so my happy ass had to walk. But, man, it was a more pleasant walk than having to go through the damn parking garage, I'll say. One of the things I would always do at Disney Springs was go to the big AMC theater, and man, did you guys know that AMC actually has a really good fucking deal that you can use to see a ton of movies and shit with? It's called AMC Stubs Gold Membership or some shit, But basically, you pay $22 a month and you get to see up to 3 movies without paying extra for every week. That's right, every week. If you saw 3 movies every week for a month, that works out to about $1.84 for every movie. Like, do you see how crazy of a deal that is? I took advantage of that shit. I was seeing at least 2 movies every time I went to that theater. Now, you do still have to pay a lot for theater food, but sometimes when you accumulated enough points in your account, you can get a massive discount on that stuff. I'm not sponsored or anything, full disclosure, that was just a great way of seeing movies for relatively cheaply when I was down there. But hey, AMC, if you want to do a proper sponsor, hit me up. We can do great business together. I'll give you a good deal, my friend. Another thing you probably want to know a bit more about is the utilidors, right? Alright, I'll oblige. The utilidors are the main way you get places when you're a cast member at Disney World. It's mainly a Magic Kingdom thing. There is a utilidor system in Epcot as well, but they didn't build one for Hollywood Studios or for Animal Kingdom. Cast members there just kind of had to walk through the park to get to their section for work, or maybe they have to walk around the park from each parking lot to get to their section. I wouldn't know because I didn't work at those parks. It makes sense why they wouldn't want to build the utilidors for the later parks, because they were a pain in the ass to build, man. They didn't dig the tunnels under the park. No, they built the tunnels on ground level and then built Magic Kingdom on top of the utilidors. The reason they did this is because Florida has a very high water table, and building things underground here is very impractical and difficult. It's a pretty interesting thing to learn about the construction of the parks. I've always thought it was fascinating. In the Main Street break room, they actually have a bunch of pictures from when the park was being constructed. I loved looking at that stuff, man. That was pretty cool. But anyways, the utilidors were built to go to every section of the park, as seen on this map. The whole thing looks like a deflated octagon with some tendrils sticking out of it. There's also a path through the middle if you really need to get to the front of the park, like people over on Main Street, Adventureland, and Tomorrowland, such as yours truly. Before some of my shifts, I would actually take some time to explore the utilidors for a bit, and it was pretty interesting. I found one area near the Frontierland exit where they store a bunch of the bubble wands and shit that were sold in the parks. Another time I saw the inside of the Cosmic Rays stockroom, and man, that place was fucking huge. I felt really bad for the people over at Cosmic Rays. That place is literally one of, if not the most busy single restaurant location on the goddamn planet. Which is especially insane when you consider the fact that you had to pay money just to get in there. I think I overheard the coordinator say that Cosmic Rays makes on average like $200,000 a day in revenue or something. Absolutely insane. Working there would have sucked ass, but it probably would have made for some great content, not gonna lie. Anyways, when some of the attractions are decommissioned and are made inaccessible to the guests, they're actually usually still accessible via the utilidors. Like this one time, one guy who knew a way to get into the closed down Stitch ride showed some of us how to get into there. It was a bit of a trek through the Tomorrowland break room and up through an elevator, and that turned out to be the break room for Stitch's Great Escape. The break room was literally in between the 2 main rooms for the show. It was crazy to see behind the scenes like that. We even explored the old ride area for a bit, and it was so bittersweet for me. I had a lot of nostalgia for this ride because it was open for so long when I was able to go to the parks as a kid. I mean, people shit on the ride because of how cheap it was and that it wasn't that good of an experience. And there may be some merit to those arguments, but I'll still miss it. Now, we've discussed some rather dire subjects in this video, as you likely remember. And if you don't, the hell have you been doing all this time? Digging in your ass or something? So to end off this part, how about we talk about a happier story? So one day, I was working on level 3. I can't remember which position exactly. It might have been seater or possibly strollers. The point was that I was seating guests. And I remember seating a rather large party. One more note about seating large parties was that you would have to make sure that you sat them at the exact tables with the right amount of seats. These tables and seats were set up with the size of each party in mind, so you had to pay attention to that shit. Anyways, back to the story. While I'm putting the wristbands on the people, an older woman in the party leans in and asks me if we can discuss something after I'm done with the wristbands. I say sure. Eventually, I finish up with the wristbands, then I tell the lady that I'm finished, and we both go over toward the buffet area to discuss it. She then says something along the lines of, "Oh, my son is planning a marriage proposal just before the fireworks go off. Would you be able to do something for them?" I am completely taken aback by this, but I managed to say something to the effect of, "Oh, yes, we can get you like a special plate from the kitchen and some other things." She then thanks me and goes back to the table. Now, I'm nervous. Really nervous. Because someone's wedding proposal is potentially riding on my bitch ass. And the fact that she said it was going to happen before fireworks was even more concerning because fireworks were maybe half an hour away at this point, so I did not have a lot of time to pull this off. At some point, I meet with one of the coordinators, and I say that there's going to be a wedding proposal happening at Seats and Sweets. They are very surprised to hear this from me, and they ask when. I say it's probably going to happen just before fireworks. The coordinator says they'll go back to the kitchen and order them to make a special plate for it, and that I should get some champagne glasses ready for when the time comes. Then I finish up whatever the hell I was doing in the kitchen and head back down to the ramp. But then I see a guy smoking right next to the podium for level 3. I'm not quite sure who that is at this point, so I leave him alone, and then I talk to the person at the podium and say that there's going to be a wedding proposal. Then I'm informed by the person on the podium that the man smoking right there, just outside of the party, because there's no smoking in the party, is the guy who's going to be proposing. That's the fucking guy? I think to myself. So then I try to inquire about when exactly he plans to propose. But after I ask him, he does not respond for a bit. But not long after, he then puts out his cigarette and says, "I'm gonna do it now." You're gonna do it now? You're gonna do it now? Shit! It's happening way earlier than I thought it would. I'm out of time now. I race over to the bar as quickly as I can. Bar! Give me two champagnes right goddamn now, man. Hurry! A marriage depends on it. Maybe. Just give me the goddamn drinks, man! And the guy on bar is going as fast as he can. And just as soon as he finished, I grab the drinks. I see the guy on one knee in the distance. I'm not quite sure what's happening. Did she say yes yet? Did my man's fall flat on his face and get rejected? Did I do all this shit for nothing? And then, one of my fellow cast members, who can see what's happening, shouts, "She said yes!" Cheers erupt from the surrounding tables. Everyone's clapping and cheering. I make my way over as quickly as possible, and I raise my champagne glasses to the happy couple. Congratulations! These are for you. Not long after, the coordinator came out with the special plate, and it looked great. Not long after that, the fireworks started, and everyone sat back and enjoyed while we prepared to close. And as I was closing that night, I felt way better than I did normally when I closed level 3. When you become a cast member, they say that you're making magic for the guests. Yeah, it does sound very cheesy, a bit corny, but believe me, there are moments, very special moments, when you're working at Disney that really do feel like you made magic. It's not often, not every day, hell, not every week, but when it happens, it's a hell of a feeling. Yeah, I bet you didn't think this one would have a happy ending, did ya? Well, every now and then one slips by you. What can you do? Is this the end of your Disney World stories then? Hell no! We're not even close to being done! There's still plenty of bullshit that happened during my Disney College program. So stay tuned, because in the next installment, I'm gonna tell you about a magical place. A place like no other. A place they call Casey's Corner. I'll see you then. This has been a Sojourner production.
Now watch this drive.